evening, everybody, and welcome back to Wilbur Talks FPL, where we talk everything, of course, FPL and the Premier League in general. We are back for episode 27. I do like to count the number, not sure why, but I like to keep track of things. We are back for another week of ups and downs, depending on how template your team is, shall we say, in FPL world. And we are back for another week, mixing the guests up slightly. We are joined by Charlie again as one of our regular guests. How are you, Charlie?
Yeah, all good, thank you.
Welcome back. And Sam is away, so we thought we'd let Pete come in and play. So we are joined by Pete today. How are you, Pete?
I'm good, thank you. It's good to be here.
Standing, or as I just said, it might be pep roulette throughout the season to get you in. Just to introduce you to the podcast a bit more, Pete. Well, more to people listening rather than yourself. I know you've been listening to us a few times when we've been on. So unfortunately, or fortunately for Pete, he supports Chelsea. So we might have a bit of rivalry between Charlie and Pete as we go through the podcast. I'm sure when we get to the quiz, definitely that'll be engaged. So before we jump into the kind of standard structure, Pete, I just wanted to get your thoughts on Chelsea for this season, how you think they're shaping up, what you make of the ins and outs around the club so far that you've had in the transfer window, and any potential signings to come. Are you quite hopeful, or what are your targets for the season?
I would say during pre-season, my hopes were very low. I was thinking top six was like the best we were going to get, sixth place. But as it's gone on, as we've got a few more players through the door, I think we can easily get a top four this season. I think off the basis of that performance against Tottenham, I think we proved that we're still one of the best teams, one of the closest to City and Liverpool like it was last season. But in terms of like transfers and stuff, it's very strange what we're doing with our transfers. It seems like we're just bidding for a player, getting rejected, going for a different one, bidding and getting rejected. There's no real plan there, but there never really is a plan with Chelsea and transfers. So I'll just see how it goes. I'll see who else we get through the door, but I'm confident of top four still this season.
Talking of random transfer activity, we've not got to United yet, but we'll touch on that when we get later on. I think we've kind of discussed previously with Sam and Charlie that we think it's probably kind of a three-team battle with yourself, Spurs and Arsenal, probably for that top four position.
I'd agree with that.
How would you see yourself when you compare yourself to those teams? Are you confident that you can at least one of them?
I think, I think Arsenal look good. I'm not going to lie, they look good. If they can keep it up when they start playing Thursday nights, and if they can stay relatively healthy and not lose key players to injury, I think they'll definitely be in the top four. And I think we're a better side than Tottenham. Proved it on Sunday. And I think we'll have more than them this season going forwards because they're also in Champions League, so there's no advantage there for them. So I think we've got top four in the bag.
Yeah, I saw an interesting comment on another podcast I was listening to earlier in the week. Because I made this point, I think, in pre-season to Charlie and Sam. I don't think they fully agreed with me. That I think Chelsea's defence is probably one of the best in the league, but I wouldn't back them to score a lot of goals, and I don't see where the goals are coming from. And on this podcast that I was listening to, they mentioned that if Chelsea had Spurs' three attackers, they would be up there to challenge for the title, which in reality I think could be the case. Would you agree that your attack kind of lets you down in a sense, or would you disagree with that?
Yeah, so especially in terms of if you compare to Tottenham's attack, Tottenham's front three is one of the best front threes in the world, in my opinion, mainly because of Kane and Son, but Kulusevski looks good as well. So I think any team that has that front three is always going to have a chance. Like, I think we are one of the best defences in the league, especially if we get Fofana through the door now. I think that the front three is what stops us from really challenging top two, in my opinion. We just don't have any goal scorers with that much creativity, to be honest.
I feel like it's kind of like a cursed position, that striker position in your team. That didn't seem to go well, and then they're gone after a year. Even Werner went quite cheap back to Leipzig. I'm like,
around half price, I think, compared to what we got him for.
I don't know, like even United could even use them with the amount of like cash they're throwing at random players.
Yeah, I mean, Werner and Lukaku have both gone back to their old teams and actually scored in the debuts against their back to being good strikers again. Now they've got Chelsea.
Yeah, just cursed when you get that shit on the back of them. I'm gonna have to put two questions to you here, Pete, that Sam has asked to ask you about. There's been rumours of a bid for Anthony Gordon in the transfer window, which I think personally we think is a bit of a strange one. And then on the flip side of that, rumours of Hudson-Odoi leaving, which I know is a bit of a fan favourite of yours. So Sam, what are your opinions on if, for say, Gordon were to come in and Hudson-Odoi were to go? Would you be a bit upset about that?
I'll start with the Gordon one. He's not a bad player, but Everton rejecting 40 million and wanting 50 million. He's not a 50 million pound player. So I've seen reports that they want him to come in and like challenge Reece James for a right wing back type role at times as well, which he's just not the sort of player I'd want to be doing that either. But with the Hudson-Odoi one, I think it would be good for a loan. He needs game time. He doesn't get a consistent run of fixtures because of how many different attackers we have. And at this stage in his career, if he's going to develop, he needs to develop this year, to be honest. So I think a loan to the Premier League side or somewhere like that would be good for him, to be honest.
Yeah, like a Southampton or someone like that, kind of that level around.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Even if he was involved in like a swap deal, including Fofana in Leicester, and get the price down a bit, I think that'd be good.
Yeah. And I think Sam's second question is very much tongue-in-cheek with this question, but I'll ask it for his benefit. He said, if you were choosing between Hudson-Odoi and Jordan Ibe, who would you be choosing?
Jordan Ibe?
Yeah.
I'm not answering that question.
I thought I'd ask it for Sam's benefit, but it was a more tongue-in-cheek one. But yeah, thank you for that. I thought we'd just dive into Chelsea a bit while you want to start us off, but we'll dive into more how the general structure would be, and we'll jump back to Charlie because I left him out of there for a few minutes. So I think we should start with you, Charlie. And how did your game week 2 go in FPL?
Yeah, not too bad. Above the average. I got 66 points against the average of 57, which, looking at it from that point of view, is okay. But in terms of kind of overall, I know it's very early on, but did have a red arrow from last week. But yeah, like I say, it's very early on. A couple of points separates quite a lot of overall rank at the moment. So not too worried. Kind of key areas I'm looking at the moment is that double Liverpool defence. That's going to be a big bone of contention for me at the moment. I am starting to be swayed about whether I shift off Robson, not specifically because I think that he's a bad option in himself, but I just feel like, and maybe in honour of Pete being on the pod, swapping Robertson for James would actually probably be better value. And then I would probably actually consider Diaz as the best of the 8 million midfielders, eventually moving on Kulusevski. So these are all kind of things in the plan, but all of those kind of players blanking for me this week. So it's really my boy Jesus getting the big points like he did a lot of people, and Martinelli as well. And then, quite enjoying these points from Trippier. It's I know in our league, or particularly on the pod, he's owned by most of us, but in general, he's quite an interesting little pick from the outside the top 6, where most of our picks are from. So it's been quite enjoying how he's been returning points. But yeah, again, not too bad. Just want to keep hitting that 60 points or above, hopefully.
All I'm saying is I'm glad I made the Jesus transfer a week earlier than the original plan, because my original plan was to go ahead without Jesus the first 2 weeks and then make a choice between Kane and Haaland. But I think I put a comment in the Discord saying, oh, Jesus was terrible the first game week, and I'm like, terrible because he didn't get points, not necessarily that he wasn't involved. So I was expecting, after I saw Leicester as well and how poor they were in the back, I just had to do it a week early, and Kane was playing Chelsea, so I've lost out on those Kane points, but obviously I've gained, I think, 11 points by making that transfer. So in the end, it's not worked out too badly, and just to flex the plan, you got to be flexible even when you've got a plan in there. So worked out luckily for me. I think very similar points. I got 3 points less than you, and I think, as you've touched on, I think majority of our team is pretty similar. That Trippier. I think the main issue I've just got at the back is that I didn't start with Cancelo, but I have got James. So at the minute, James is kind of keeping up with Cancelo, but not. I think it was 4 points short. So that's basically the difference between our teams. But it's interesting to hear that you could be bringing James in, because I've considered maybe a Robertson to Cancelo move at some point. But I don't think it's top of the priority list for now, because Robertson obviously has the pedigree that he can get those clean sheets. It's just like, even looking at a Palace game, what a finish that was by Zaha. Realistically, it should have got a clean sheet in that game. So I don't want to be too reactional this season and just see how it goes. But I do agree with you on Diaz that, well, especially more now Nunes is out of 3 games, I think he's going to be more involved. I think when Nunes is on the pitch, I don't like Diaz as much as an asset because he doesn't get involved as much in the middle. Obviously, he scored a wonder goal the other night. I don't know, that was typically when Diaz wasn't on the pitch as well. So I think he's very appealing for the next set of fixtures. So I understand why you potentially weighing that one up, but I think I'll be sticking with Robertson mainly because I've got issues elsewhere that I need to deal with really. The only downside of booking in that transfer to being in Jesus is obviously I haven't got a double transfer, which I think you have, Charlie, because you rolled it from the previous week. So I can see, I've seen a lot of people where actually have got 2 transfers and I'm not sure what to do with it, which seems to be a bit of a strange situation that we're not used to. I just wanted to touch on Sam's team, obviously, because he's not in the pod, and he was very excited that I was going to let him go first because he got the highest score this week. He got an 83 points, which is actually put him above Charlie in the league, which obviously it's only 2 weeks in, but you never know. Get the season called off and Sam can have that place above him.
I want to call out specifically here, right? So he's currently 2 points ahead of me in the league.
Yeah.
Those 2 points were the difference between him then switching to what I said he should go with a Haaland captain. He was on Salah. I convinced him to switch to Salah, convinced him to switch to Haaland, which earned him the points to get above me in the league. So you're welcome, Sam.
Just sticking that one out there, yeah. I think that the main difference is that he's actually got James and Cancelo that we've talked about. He's got Ederson in goal and then Diaz. Obviously got that wonder goal. So yeah, very strong week for Sam, but kind of what you touched on, Charlie, as well. I'm not too fussed about rank at this stage. I think I'm ranked like 1.7 million, but it's 7 points to be in the million. So I'm like, okay, literally at this point, the movement isn't. You can move quite easily, even if you get like 7 points, for example. So not looking into that too much. I think it's just sticking with the crowd to start with the season and not falling too far behind. I think I fell a bit behind at the start last time. I think I'm about 20 points behind GW2 now, so that's achievable to get back, hopefully, of course. And then if we bring Pete into it as well, how was your game week 2, Pete? And because we've only had an extra week before that, how are you doing in general so far this season?
Well, in terms of this game, we had a bit of a shocker in terms of I finished a point below the average points, which I hate doing in the first place. But it just wasn't my week in general, really. I went with the Salah over Haaland captain, which on Saturday night I was flexing how good of a choice that was. And then on Monday night, it came crashing down to earth because Salah just didn't perform, basically, against Palace. He couldn't find the space and get the goals. But in general, I'm fine with the team. I've got 2 free transfers as well. And I think one of those will be used to downgrade Saka to a Martinelli, I think, because I currently have 2 8 million midfielders of Kulusevski and I value him higher than Saka in general. But I want to keep the triple Arsenal because of their fixtures, and I think they'll be good at the start of the season. They'll get a few wins, get a few goals. So yeah, overall, I mean, after game week 1, I was top of that league and loving life. But yeah, it took a bit of a hit this week. But yeah, I mean, I'm only going to use one of the transfers, and it will most likely be Martinelli to Saka to Martinelli, and roll over with 2 going into the game week 4.
Yeah, we'll touch on potential transfer plans as we get on, but I think for that 2 million difference, well, I think it's less than that now. Martinelli's gone up. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it, to just use that other like 1.8 or whatever it is now elsewhere. And that is one of the picks I'm least happy with at the start of the season to benefit from those price rises with Martinelli. So we move on to the fixtures that results, should I say, fixtures. I'm getting ahead of myself there. If we look back at the results that we had over the weekend, I'm going to flip straight back to Charlie and I'm going to let him enjoy his time at the start of the season until his bubble bursts after the international break. So, what did you make of Arsenal's result? And obviously, Jesus carrying most of our FPL teams, Charlie.
Yeah, all going well, really. Once again, it just feels like everything's linking up, everything's working to plan. And yeah, again, that front three, or particularly Jesus and Martinelli, the way it works, and like you say, in terms of the value between Martinelli and Saka, Saka is very much turning creator at the moment in that team, allowing Jesus and Martinelli to be the ones getting into the positions up front. So yeah, it's really exciting to see. And yeah, a bit disappointed with the 2 goals conceded, to be honest. Both were a little dodgy, really. One was the own goal from Saliba. Quite a nice point for it in terms of a fan reception of that, though. As you know, a few seconds after that, he was just applauded and the fans sung his name. So he's definitely earned enough credit in the bank to let an own goal in here or there. And then the other one, Ramsdale probably should have done better. It's quite a wide shot from Maddison that went through Ramsdale's legs, I think. So yeah, a bit disappointing, and also because I've got Ramsdale and goal in my FPL team to concede those 2 goals. But yeah, going forwards again, still looking good, and yeah, good fixture run still going for like you said, pretty much up until the international break and onwards. So yeah, pretty pleased with that.
Yeah, I don't feel like that Saliba goal was actually that bad, the own goal. I think with it Vardy running in behind, I feel like if we didn't make an interception there, Vardy probably would have put it in anyway. So
yeah, he definitely had to head it, but yeah, it's not much he could do other than just try and direct it a bit wider. But like you say, he was under pressure from Vardy, so
yeah, I'd definitely be more frustrated with that second one. Yeah, Ramsdale should be beaten from there. But I'm sure me and Pete were happy because we don't have Ramsdale for this fixture. I just looked at your goalkeepers, Pete, and I'm going to chat about them later because we have the same combination, which I'm a bit shaky on currently. We'll touch on that as we get further into it. Well, we actually are linking quite well now, seeing as though we're playing Leicester. So you've got a double up with the Leicester keepers, the same as me, Pete. Are you getting a bit shaky with them, seeing as how Ward can just drop a ball and even let Xhaka score at this point?
Yeah, I would say in principle it looked good to have 2 4 million keepers and save an extra bit of money, but now that I've got some money back from Saka to Martinelli, I will be upgrading my keeper at some point soon. I can't stick with that. They're not going to keep clean sheets. I just can't see it happen.
Yeah, I think in my mind it's okay for this week because they're playing Southampton, so there's a possibility they can get a clean sheet, and then it's a think about next week because the run after that isn't particularly great. I think they've got your lot straight after it, and then to the international break, it's not fantastic. So can readdress after the international break, but even goes like a Ramsdale or something like we've mentioned, even a 4.5. I think some of the 4.5s like a Sanchez or a Raya until the international break look pretty good. Fixture list, especially Brentford's, is very nice going forward. So even for that 0.5 extra, I think it's going to be worth it. So that's what I'm considering probably next week. Probably not a priority one for this week with a Southampton fixture, but definitely one to keep an eye on with that double. Yeah, like you said, it looked nice originally, but maybe not great. I think Charlie did recommend not doing it, and
that kind of made me want to do it more, though.
I'm not gonna lie. The thing is, it saved me like 1.5 million from my original plans, and I think I downloaded a midfielder and allowed me to get 3 premiums, which looked nice to start with. But I'm not sure. It's giving me flexibility now because we talked on the pod last week that I went from Kane to Jesus, so it left me like 4 million in the bank, which obviously is better to be invested in your team. But going into this set of transfer, I've only got 1 transfer. Going into game week 3, I've got like 4 million that I could use on any position, which isn't a bad place to be in. So it wasn't like it might not have worked out for the first 2 weeks overall, being a bit behind, but I've got good flexibility even with the 1 transfer for this week. So I feel like if I got very unlucky in that game week 1 going with Kane and him avoiding a goal or assist out of 4 goals, so the idea was that he would have made some of that difference up, but can't look back in anger, and we look for the points as we go forward in the season. But we might have to listen to Charlie slightly more on some points, but not all of them. If I flip back to you, Pete, and just get your thoughts on some of the leading teams. So City quite easily beat Bournemouth, as I think a lot of us expected. You might not have expected Haaland to get involved as much since you captain Salah. What did you make of the City game in terms of overall and in terms of your assets? In terms of Haaland not getting a great deal of touches in that game, I think was a big talking point.
Yeah. I would say really the performance and the result is as you would expect from a Man City at home to Bournemouth game. I think we all knew they were very unlikely to concede. They were likely to get a few goals. And just City in general, watching them against West Ham the week before that as well, you can tell. I just can't see anyone beating them this season. I think when people are saying that their main rivals at the moment are Arsenal, that just sums up how much better they are because Arsenal aren't going to challenge City at all. I can't see that happening. They're just the way Pep set them up. They're so fluid and they can just get you from so many different places on the pitch. And in terms of FPL, it's good because I think they're even more like reliable for clean sheets this season. I don't think they're going to concede very many goals, even though they never used to. But it's part of my consideration of potentially going to Ederson and having Cancelo and Ederson from the City defence because I think they will just dominate so many games like we've seen in their first 2 games this season. But yeah, Haaland. It wasn't that I wasn't thinking Haaland wouldn't get like goal contributions. Obviously, he got the assist. It's just I backed Salah. I know there was a stat about him scoring most times he's ever played against Palace. I just backed him basically having a better performance than Haaland. But yeah, that didn't go well. But I always thought Haaland would get a goal or assist. I think the 8 touches, which is one more than the Lukaku one from Palace last season, which got talked about a lot compared to this one. But yeah, he'll score lots of goals this season, so it's not much of a worry. I'll have him captain a lot more in the future.
Yeah, you mentioned about Salah's record against Palace. I know I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying that Salah's never scored in game week 2 as well, which is just one of those one of those funny ones that just like totally random and doesn't really mean much, but it continues.
Yeah, it does.
It's quite funny that one. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think especially with Haaland when it comes to like Champions League time, if he's going to be playing all of the games or not, or if he's going to be subject to the Pep roulette. I quite like Alvarez who they've got who could replace him up front, or you've seen him previously obviously not work without a striker. So I think obviously Haaland is a great option, but I feel like at some point in the season, obviously it could be from injury with his track record before, it could be rotation. He will not be essential as he is now. I'd be tempted when we get to like a game week 6 or something when Champions League's in full flow that he might not be the most value you can get in that City team, but be interesting to see. Yeah. Adds another very interesting dynamic having a striker that we're not used to at City. So
yeah. The other problem is that he gets subbed off quite early on again. He's not completed 90 minutes yet, has he? So you're missing out on like 20 or 25 minutes basically every game at the moment with Haaland. So there's potential to move away from him.
Yeah, it's interesting because like, do you still want 70 minutes in like the best team in the league who you know are going to create chances or take a risk against that? So it's a good 70 minutes to have. But, you have to wait up later in the season, especially if he's not starting, for example, and not give Alvarez a few games. But we'll see how it develops as we go on. I'll be surprised if he gets through a season without an injury, but I know I think part of even the contractual agreement when they brought Haaland to the club is that they'll look after him and make sure they can try and avoid the injury where possible, and that would mean like giving him these 20 minutes off or certain games and being rested. So that's why I'm a bit inclined to say he's not going to get all the minutes, but we've already seen that. So see how it develops further into the season. If we flip back to you, Charlie, I'm not going to touch on the late game in Saturday yet. Out of the other Saturday fixtures, is there anything that really sprung out to you? A few 0-0s in there. Got an interest in Southampton against Leeds 2-2. Southampton doing good to come back. Villa getting a win after the previous week. Anything that stuck out for you on that Saturday?
Yeah, a lot of those kind of middling teams, again, similar to game week 1, where, kind of going unnoticed, really. You touched on that Southampton Leeds fixture. I think, particularly from an FPL perspective, Rodrigo is making a bit of a name for himself. I know it's only 2 games of data to go on, but even underlying numbers, he's actually doing quite well as well. And I think he's up to 6.1 as a midfielder,
yeah, I think so.
kind of playing as a number 10 in that position. Obviously, the fact he's playing Chelsea this week isn't great, but they don't have a bad run for a little while after, so he might be on a few people's agendas. But outside of that, I didn't think there was anything particularly notable from the rest of the games. Brighton, Newcastle, both defences being interesting. I mentioned Trippier before. Obviously, they've now got 2 bad games out of 3. I think they've got City and Liverpool coming up. But just interesting to see where some of these kind of middling teams will end up. I feel like Brighton in particular are kind of they're kind of known for underperforming based on how their stats are and things like that. But it feels like this is the season it's starting to turn a little bit, and they're actually hitting some of the or getting the returns from their performances, which is interesting.
Yeah, I kind of agree on that. Rodrigo comment he said about Leeds. I feel like the next two fixtures, I think it's Chelsea and then Brighton away, which I don't back as good fixtures. So I think if you consider Rodrigo, I think probably wait those 2 weeks and then jump on the run after that. I've seen comments from like the Leeds fans that you can easily have 2 great games and then have 2 terrible games and be out of the team. So it's one to watch out for, because it's one of these ones that we have probably every season, and it's kind of one of these hype, well, we'll call it hype train kind of thing, where they do well for the first few weeks and then everyone tries to buy them and then they just drop off or get dropped from the team. I would say it's quite similar to Ben Rama last season. I feel he had like 3 or 4 great game weeks and then didn't really do much at all after that. So for me, it's if he has a good performance in those other 2 fixtures, certainly, but I'd hold off for now, definitely, given how difficult the fixtures get. But there is some other interesting players in that Leeds team. I know Bamford got an injury, but I don't think it's too serious. And I'd even say that Harrison and Aronson. Oh God, I've never tried to say them together before. That was more difficult than I expected. They offer great value in that midfield as well. So I think any of them could actually get returns in a good run for Leeds. So yeah, I quite like the value options that they've got in their midfield. So yeah, kind of what you said, Charlie. I think there's a few value picks, especially in midfield, from across a lot of these teams. But I think it's a wait and see, and we'll just jump on some of them when they've got a good fixture run. But yeah, not a lot to talk about. I will mention the late game on Saturday, unfortunately. I feel like on every pod I talk about United, would either of you like to comment on United's performance or anything to do with United before I jump into it? I'm sure you'd absolutely love to, especially Charlie. I can imagine him jumping straight into this one.
There are lots of words I can think of, but I don't think any of them are broadcastable.
Yeah,
for the level of Man United's performance.
I feel like
it's very enjoyable, I have to say.
Yeah, I feel like every week we could probably have a separate pod just talking on Man United issues, which should be a spin-off show, really. But yeah, well, you can just look at the score and it kind of tells us the story, doesn't it? And it's the same thing we say every week, really, from my point of view. You can say transfers, different people, the issues, but I think I've been quite clear the issue has always been the owners. Like, no matter what, obviously it's a toxic environment for the players, and I think they need a big clear out of certain people in the dressing room. I think they've got certain people out that were quite toxic. Using a few examples, actually naming names here, Lingard and Henderson, who's actually out on loan. I don't know if you guys saw the comments, like a week or so after he'd gone out on loan, just ripping into the club, and like, you realise you're a loan player here, and you've still got to come back to your parent club. I'm like, okay. But it's a strange atmosphere in that dressing room, and I think the whole club needs a change. It's just kind of rotten to the core at this point, and I've seen a lot of excitement this week around potential that the Glazers might want to sell, which I think it can only obviously be a positive thing, as I've discussed. And they just need to go back to basics and just build the club back up, because I think a key thing that I think from the ownership, obviously I'm going to do 2 minutes deep dive into United and I'll jump straight back out. Like the Glazers, you can say, oh, they own the club and they've spent all this money, but they've never actually spent their own money. A key thing is that United, probably, you could argue with certain clubs now, commercially, United are one of the biggest clubs in the world. They don't need investment into their club to be able to spend this money. The money we have spent is what we've made from our revenue. It's not Glazer that pumped in multi-millions to spend more. If anything, they've taken money out of the club. They couldn't even finance buying the club with their own money. They'd say bank loans. So we're just paying, basically, paying off their dividends, or paying their dividends and paying off their loans at the same time. So if anything, we've spent less than we should be as a club that we've kind of got the stature to be, and at the minute that stature's been thrown about, and it's just not how a top level football club or any kind of sports team or any organisation in the world should be run. So It's just terrible management on their side, I think, and I think they're getting a bit lost when it comes to their football knowledge as well. It's quite obvious they're not used to this kind of football environment. So, in my opinion, like it's not going to get better until they're gone. I've heard a lot of chat about it potentially happening in the near future, but either way, if it is going to happen, it's probably going to take a good 2 years to even get it sorted. I don't see it being the same as Chelsea because they had to sell. So it's going to be a while, and I think at least a good 2 years or something, Arsenal fans, etc., will be enjoying it. But yeah, we'll see with that, and I'm not expecting a good upturn in performances yet, but that's to say, I'm not looking forward to the game at Old Trafford against Liverpool next game week. That will be interesting. I was going to mention this later down the line as well when we get to talking about next week. There's plans to be protests and everything at Old Trafford next week, on Monday night, I think it is. And I think we had exactly the same situation previously where there was protests and people broke into the stadium and the game got postponed. One of my always top tips is don't have a captain and a vice captain on the same game, especially if it's Liverpool players. Do not be doing that this week because there is, I say, a slight chance. I don't think it's going to be a big chance, but there's a chance that game could get called off if things get a bit messy, especially outside the stadium. And I think what I'm seeing from the fans is if a new owner wants to bid, the fans need to apply pressure from their side as well to the Glazers. So just watch out for that one. And hopefully we've got a few options on the bench that can come on in case that game does get postponed. I feel like it's going back to COVID seasons when we all got these random postponements and we didn't have enough playing players, but that's just one I thought I'd throw out there just to put a spanner potentially in the works, especially on a lot of us with triple Liverpool. I'm sure not many of us got United players to worry about. But yeah, that's all I was going to say about that. I don't know if you guys want to say anything else, but I think we cover it every week, don't we, really, the demise currently.
I think I would just say something about in the 4-0 result. Mm-hmm. It's a learning curve for Ten Hag himself as well because he got his team he got his lineup wrong, he got his tactics wrong for a game away at Brentford. I just don't think you can be having a 5'9" centre back. It's just not going to work against a team like Brentford that will just lob it up there to someone like a Tony and just hassle you and make you not want it, basically.
Yeah, it was just too easy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was too easy.
Yeah, anytime it came on the floor, you'd back Martinez, but when it's on the in the air, you've got really no chance. And obviously, when he's got a centre-back partnership with someone else who's a liability, then it's not really going to go well, is it? But yeah, that's a different subject.
Also, the way they were struggling under the press was pretty worrying, I would say, especially considering when you're going to be playing Liverpool next week, you're kind of known for their press. Even if they're under strength, they're going to, every single one of those players is going to be pressing like mad, and you'd expect them to get quite a lot of reward against United based on last week's evidence.
Yeah, like I said, in the short term, anyone playing United, go for it. Captain them most of the time. I think this week it's a bit different. We'll talk about it for captaincy. There's quite a few good options, but it's definitely in the thinking, especially after last season as well. I can see it being a very similar game to that, like a 5-0. It wouldn't surprise me at all, but depends if Ten Hag goes the same as he has been going in his approach, or if he just sits back, because it's going back to the so-called Ollie days, where most of our games when we had Ollie, the harder games were actually quite well in because it was set up quite nicely for us to sit back and counter-attack, and that's probably one of our only strengths in attack at the minute, the counter-attack. So either way, I don't see us getting a result, but wouldn't be surprised if we shut up shop a bit just to try and not concede as many and not have an embarrassing 4-0 example again. But yeah, I think enough on that one for this week. I'm sure we're back to the same issue next week when it is 5-0, but we shall see. So back to you, Pete. The drama of Sunday, which everyone in the Discord was absolutely loving, and I'm sure you weren't. What did you make of the 2-2 at Stamford Bridge? And without too many swear words, what did you think of some potential dubious decisions in that game?
Yeah, I mean, I got my thoughts across at the time in the Discord, but from a Chelsea perspective, it was a really good performance from us. I think it's the best we've played since, I would say, away to Real Madrid Champions League last season. And we won the game, we lost the tie, but it was the same. It was similar tactics, similar lineup, barring a couple players. And yeah, I was really impressed with the way we were able to press them, especially in the first half. I'd say in the first half, where they didn't get out of their own half, basically. Yeah, and the press was really good. I thought Tuchel got his tactics right throughout the game. Even when Conte switched to a 4-4-2, he then kind of switched to more of a like a 5-back, more than a 3-back, and moved Loftus-Cheek inside, Reece James right wing back, which led to the second goal. So he was able to adapt. Yeah, in terms of the two Tottenham goals, I mean, I think it's pretty general consensus, even outside the Chelsea fan base, that neither of them should have stood, especially, I would say, the second one. And I've seen a lot of like Chelsea fans mainly saying like the second one, it should be a red card, but I don't care about that, considering where it was in the game. But when you've got pictures of Andy Taylor staring right at the incident and he's not even giving a foul for it, it's ridiculous. And then VAR having a look at it, and you can clearly see it's a foul, but because of the rules they have implemented, there's nothing that can be done about it to stop the second corner. And then the goal. So yeah, I'd say little things like that. But overall, considering I think Tottenham were the favourites going into it, even though it was at Stamford Bridge with their record, I'd say Chelsea definitely proved to a lot of people that they're still going to be up there this season, and they're still going to be challenging the likes of Tottenham and Arsenal going into the next game weeks.
Yeah, we mentioned this game on last week's pod, and I think I thought for my view that it was a bigger game for Spurs, because I think it could have really stamped their authority on the season and showed have got over that kind of they can't beat certain teams. I think from the Spurs fan base point of view is they see the Chelsea away game as one of their hardest of the season, because they just can't get over that mental barrier of being able to beat Chelsea. But then I know Charlie and Sam mentioned that it's probably a bigger game for Chelsea at the same time, because they're at home and probably keeping their stake in there for the top four at the same time. So it's going to be an interesting one, and I don't see you being too far apart over the course of the season, really. It's like we've talked about before. I think you've got the stronger defence, I've got the stronger attack, so it'll be an interesting one to see where it goes. But yeah, some of the decisions in that game, I didn't see it live, but caught up on them later. It's very dubious. I don't know what you thought of some of the decisions, Charlie. I'm sure even obviously as not the biggest Chelsea fan, you can understand some frustrations on some of those decisions.
Yeah, it was a very poor game from the referee in general, I think. Yeah, as much as I don't want to go on record agreeing with Pete, I do have to in those particular situations. They weren't. Yeah, I'd be very annoyed if that was for Arsenal as well.
Yeah, some very strange decisions. VAR is good in some ways and then not good in others, as illustrated there, really, isn't it? Yeah. But yeah, you've got to be positive after that performance, at least, though you didn't get a result, did you, Pete? So it looks a bit more brighter going forward.
Yeah, I'd say they had a lot to prove going into it, and they proved it, so they've done well.
They just need to do that consistently, really, don't they, going forward? Because I think
they do.
The year that you won the Champions League, I think coming into that Premier League season after that, there was a lot of hype around that you could potentially challenge. And I think that was when you'd signed Lukaku, wasn't it? And they were like, that's the missing piece that you need. But I never really backed it, because I saw that Chelsea could really win any game in a cup tie environment, but over 38 games, I don't ever think they're consistent enough currently to be able to pull that off, especially when you've got a City and a Liverpool that are just ridiculously on a different level, really, especially over 38 games. But it's going to take a massive drop off for those two, or like miraculous improvement from everyone else to be able to catch them anyway. So there's a big gap currently. While we're on Chelsea, I'm sure this might be of slight interest to Charlie as well, that I know we mentioned Reece James. I know James kind of played like a slightly different role against Spurs, more to deal with Son, from what I've seen. What do you think? You might have to put a bit of a swing on this question. If you didn't sign any more players, would you expect James to generally play like a right wing back, or would he cover the right centre back quite a lot in the formation? And then put in another caveat to that question: if you sign like a Fofana, another centre back, in that kind of position, would you expect him to play wing back a lot more?
Yeah, I'd say in terms of the first question, it really does depend on who Chelsea play on the game week, on whether he's a centre back or a right wing back at this point. Because he's proven that he's so good in either position that you put him in, that when you come up against the likes of a Son, or I'm pretty sure when he comes up against a Luis Diaz, as things stand currently, he would be in the centre-back role, and we would have a Loftus-Cheek and a right wing-back who proved that he can play there and play well, just improving on the final product from him. But if Fofana comes, and when he comes, I would expect Reece James to be playing right wing-back game in, game out, basically, barring any fitness issues. I can't see any need, because Reece James, Fofana's good enough to cover. We're not going to spend 80 million on him and then protect him in certain games with certain players. He's got to go out and prove that he can play against those players and match those players like Reece James can do. So I'd say Reece James will be playing more games at right wing back than right centre back this season, and I'd expect once Fofana's in, it will be every game.
Yeah, I think Fofana's got that pace that you need for a centre back, isn't it? Because you've kind of got, I'm not going to say old fogies, but you've got like Thiago Silva and Koulibaly who maybe past it in terms of their getting around the pitch as quickly as, for example, a Son. So it makes sense you need that cover, and Fofana seems like a decent fit in terms of that pacey side of the game. So I'm sure that's music to Charlie's ears, and I think we've both got him as well, so I'm sure we're quite happy at that.
Yeah.
Just while we're on that Chelsea defence, would you consider any other defenders a decent buy in FPL? I've seen a lot of people mention about Cucurella potentially, because like Chilwell, there's a bit of doubt if he can get a lot of minutes in there or not.
I would say, I would agree with the Cucurella one, but I would say more because he can play that left centre back role like he has done, like he did do for Brighton last season.
Yeah.
I say that would be a lot barring on the Fofana transfer. We wouldn't need to that as much, and it would be more like a left centre back, I'd say, in like midweek games, Champions League games, just as cover. Because I can't see Thiago Silva playing the amount of games that he played last season. He's 37 now. I can't see him doing it again, even though he's proved that he can do it. He can do it very well still. I think there'd be more protection for him this season, especially if Fofana came in. But I reckon Cucurella might end up being the left wing back spot more often than Chilwell this season. I don't think it'll be like a massive difference, but certainly this stage of the season, Chilwell, I know he played Monday. He was in the Chelsea development squad against Fulham because he's still not match fit yet. So it will be Cucurella for a little while longer whilst Chilwell gets that match fitness up because of the injury and how long the layoff was. But I think Cucurella's the better pick in terms of him or Chilwell, and he would be my other defender choice if I ever went there, but I don't think I will at the moment.
Yeah, I don't mind it as like a short-term option, especially while Chilwell's still going to get the fitness. Like if you want it for like a 5-week period and then you get a wild card out of it, for example, I don't mind it in that situation. So it's an interesting one. I think he's 5 million, which is a decent price, obviously, to get into that Chelsea defence. And I think if Fofana comes, he's 4.5, which also could be slightly tempting. He's decent in the air as well, maybe from a few set pieces. So, and you'd expect if you're paying that kind of money, he's going to start a lot of the games. So
he will.
It might be a bit more guaranteed for minutes than Cucurella. So
definitely.
Could still be a few interesting transfers to come. About two-ish weeks after the window. So everything always changing.
It's going to be busy.
Yeah, hopefully United aren't doing too much panic buying. We had a bit of discussion about that before, all the crazy transfer rumours around United at the minute, but we'll see what comes of that. I'll slightly come back to Forest in a minute, but if we go back to you, Charlie, Liverpool dropping points again. What did you think of that? Nunes with a crazy headbutt, shall we say, which probably cost Liverpool arguably getting back and getting a win there.
Well, you say that, but I think as quite a few people have pointed out, they seemed to come alive when Nunes went off, and I feel a bit like as well, and we're going off a very small amount of data, but it feels like a similar thing's happening with Liverpool and Nunes as is Man City and Haaland, where they're having to adjust to a focal point up top, and it feels particularly up until Nunes went off, that it was just all a bit too focused on Nunes and trying to get him the ball in key areas. And then when he went off, they then had a lot more flexibility and the ability, like Diaz, to just kind of come alive and float around the pitch. So I don't think it was a stupid thing to do, and he got absolutely played by Anderson. Who I don't know if people have seen the video, but there's a kind of compilation going around on Twitter of what Anderson was doing throughout the game to Núñez to kind of rile him up, that ended in him basically headbutting him, which was very stupid. And obviously, I think because of the quality of player, he will come back in eventually, and it feels like Firmino's kind of dwindling. But with Firmino in that squad, it just feels like the rest of the team does better because of it. Whereas with Núñez in there, it feels like I say, it's more focused on him trying to do well. And I think I'm a bit worried. So another reason why I'm worried about the double Liverpool defence in my FPL team is the second centre-back slot. So obviously Matip's injured, as is Konate. Gomez was supposed to be possibly coming back, but was, I think, not quite fit enough, or even got another little niggle in the build-up, which led to Nat Phillips playing instead. That kind of chopping and changing isn't ideal for any defence, but particularly in the Liverpool defence where they're basically wing-backs get pushed so high up, it really does rely on those two centre-backs. Van Dijk can't cover the whole back area of the pitch. It really does rely on the two centre-backs to be absolutely perfect to come away with clean sheets. So, not great. But I mean, it's Liverpool. They will bounce back. I'm sure they'll absolutely demolish Man United next week. And again, Liverpool's fixtures are pretty good going forwards as well. So I imagine they'll spring back from that pretty well. And to be honest, like I say, I think they'll be much more free-flowing and much more better attacking-wise as a team because of the lack of Núñez, actually. And then just a word for Palace as well. I think they've, obviously we beat them in the first day, and I thought they were okay, but not as good as I was expecting. But I think over the course of the season, again, they'll have a very decent season by their standards, finishing comfortably mid-table and maybe even pushing bottom Europa spaces if some of those teams drop out. So, I think all round an okay game from Palace. Obviously, coming away from Anfield with a point is great for any team. So, I think you have to applaud the work going on there.
For the relegation scrap at Old Trafford now, then, isn't it?
It is quite funny the fact that if you were to win, which I don't think anyone thinks would happen, but if you were to, you would go ahead of them. It's quite
kind of crazy, isn't it? I'm having the biggest, horrendous start you've ever seen, and then it could still be above Liverpool if we won. But like you said, I don't expect us to win it, so that'll be out of the question. Can you imagine this is linking in perfectly. Imagine if you was a Forest fan now and you just sat there above Liverpool and Man United, you're like, take this for the first season in about 23 years, I think it is. So they'll be more than happy. So I'm just going to touch on that last game and come back to you, Pete. Forest getting their first win. And, well, I don't know if you've seen the highlights in that game. I'm not going to say they were lucky, but I'll say they were very lucky to somehow get away with a clean sheet in that game. So I'll just get a quick note on what you think of Forest going forward, and just thinking of the other two promoted teams. Do you think any of them across the board have got a chance of staying up from what you've seen in the two games so far?
Yeah, I'll say I watched the Forest game live because it's for Chelsea when I had it on. I think the thing you say about Forest is, I think out of the three promoted teams, they'll be the ones that stay up. I don't have much faith in the other two. And I'd say it is purely down to that atmosphere that they can create at the home games. I think we saw it in the FA Cup run last year. I think they beat Arsenal, Leicester, and had a chance against Liverpool in all home games. And the atmosphere can just take them up to another level. I think that will be the case in those games, especially against not a time like West Ham are a better side than them. They'll finish above them in the league. But in those games against the likes of Bournemouth, Fulham, Everton, those type of teams, I think the atmosphere will be what gets them over the line and safe this season. And I would also say the amount of signings they're making, the amount of money they're spending, they're clearly serious about wanting to stay up. And if they can all gel, if all the signings can find their way into the system and get settled in, I expect them to be fine this season.
I don't get how they're going to get all the signings into one team. They've signed about 3 or 4 strikers. It's not the most attacking system you're going to see, because the new striker scored, didn't he, the weekend, and then they've signed, I think, 2 more. I'm like, well, I don't know how you're going to fit all these players in the team, but I think I mentioned it in the pre-season pod, saying that they're the hardest one to really predict Forest, because had a lot of loan players and they're buying a lot of players in. So it's probably going to take them a while to settle, but they'll be very happy they've got some points on the board and settle them down a bit. Yeah, Bournemouth got a good result the first week, but I'm not overly convinced by them. Fulham, I think, have got a decent chance of staying up as well, depending on the performance.
Fulham surprised me with that performance against Liverpool.
And they were semi-decent against Wolves. They should have really won with that penalty, but we shall see. I think Fulham will be that club that could be either side of the line. It depends how you like Everton and Southampton do, but I don't have much hope for Bournemouth really, but we'll see how it unfolds. There's a lot of surprises, like people wouldn't have expected Forest to win, so that's one straight away.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that covers the results from game week 2. So I feel like that's the perfect moment to introduce a bit of rivalry to the podcast, which I could feel festering up when we started. Of course not. It's all good fun until one of them loses. So, Pete, we like to have a nice little quiz to break up the pod a bit. I'm sure you're used to a few of them. So,
yeah, very much so.
In honour of you being on and, of course, Charlie being here as well, we're going to have a bit of Arsenal versus Chelsea. I said to Charlie earlier, I did prepare a quiz that I was going to do with Sam as well, and I was like, Charlie's just going to win this too easy, so I'm going to have to do a new one. Because, well, not that I'm saying your FPL skills are not good, but Charlie, just on those kind of quizzes, seems to do very well. Right, so for this quiz, we're going to be talking about goal scorers in Arsenal against Chelsea fixtures. So we're going to be looking at fixtures from the start of the 2015-16 season. So this is from the 2nd of August 2015 is the first date we're looking from till the current date. So this is going to be talking about goal scorers within that period in fixtures between Arsenal and Chelsea. When I say fixtures, this can be any competitive fixture. So this is league matches, it can be in cup competitions, so it can be in League Cup, FA Cup, any European competition, and also for the benefit of adding a few potential trophies in there for Arsenal, I've also included their Community Shield. So for this, I'm counting Community Shield as a proper trophy, which some might not. So it's basically in any competitive game between the two clubs. So friendlies would not count, which I'm sure Charlie would like to count based on pre-season. But it's any competitive fixture between the two clubs. We're looking for goal scorers in that fixture between the two clubs between now and going back to the 2015-2016 season. So it's going back to the 2nd of August 2015. That is the date that the two teams played each other in the Community Shield at the start of that season. Do those rules make sense?
Just about, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to reiterate it so there was no confusion. And to start with, I'm going to give you guys one answer. There's a player that played for both teams and scored for both teams in this period. Anyone want to make a guess at that? I'm not giving bonus points for it.
In that period?
In that period, a player has scored for both teams in the same fixture.
Giroud?
Yeah, that is correct. I'm not giving bonus points for that, but I was just going to give you
bonus point, yes.
I was just going to give you that just because it was an answer for both, so I was like,
yeah,
I'll say that. So there's 35 answers in total.
35.
There's 19 Arsenal players, 16 Chelsea players. You can choose guesses from either team. So you might want to put pressure on the other person by naming players from their team and having some of your own team in the bank, for example. So there's 35 here, and as the guest, Pete, you can go first.
Let's just go Hazard.
That is correct. I had to go further back than I thought, really. It seems like it wasn't that far back, to be fair, but it's correct.
Diego Costa.
That is correct. I think there was only 2 in that period.
Yeah. Marcus Alonso, by the way.
Yeah, just before I said that answer, I just wanted to add a slight twist on this one. This also includes own goals. So if someone scored an own goal, they're also on this list. So if I'm just going to make up a name. If Maguire scored an own goal, like I don't know why I'm even used that example. Basically, in that fixture, if there's an own goal, you have to name the person who scored the own goal. Just as a twist on there is two answers in there. I will give that to you to start. There's two own goals in there, and you said Alonso, which is correct. I'm not going to tell you when it's an own goal though. When you pick a person.
Aaron Ramsey.
That is correct. I think that was in the Community Shield. I was surprised there wasn't actually in some of the other cup competitions.
Did he score in the FA Cup final?
That's it. Yeah, I did all the league games first and then the cup games after.
Yeah,
that was the one. Yeah,
remember that. Yeah.
I knew it was at Wembley.
Yeah. Let's go with Cesc Fabregas.
That is correct. For which team?
Chelsea.
Yeah, it would have been too late.
I just thought I'd say that anyway. Like, I was hoping you'd remember.
Mesut Ozil.
That is correct. You seem to be favouring your own team so far, except for Charlie's one.
I'll start with Costa,
Eddie Nketiah.
That's correct. In a very recent fixture.
Mm-hmm.
Theo Walcott.
That is correct. Scored in the same game as Ozil.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to. I remember that specific game.
You remember that game? So I know you're going to say someone else as well.
Indeed.
By the way, if we say someone that's already been said, that's not like we get to go again, basically.
I will allow you one.
Because there is quite a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
If you repeat one, I will allow you that
one. Emil Smith-Rowe.
Yep, that is correct. I wonder what fixture that was from.
Let's finish off that fixture that I was reciting from Alexis Sanchez.
I thought when Pete was nicking your earlier answers, you might keep that one in the bank, but that is correct.
No, that's fine.
Bukayo Saka.
That is correct.
Jack Wilshere.
I remember him being on the list. That is correct.
Timo Werner.
That's correct. One of the more recent ones, of course.
Granit Xhaka.
Correct.
That was the free kick, wasn't it?
I believe so, yeah.
Azpilicueta.
That's correct. I'd put Aspie on my thing and I'd gone past it on my list. I was like, not spelling that.
Lacazette.
That is correct. I was waiting for you to get that one because on my list it goes Saka, Xhaka, and then I was like, I was enjoying that one. That's correct.
Let's go with Lukaku.
Correct.
Rudiger.
Correct.
Reece James.
That's also correct.
I believe, trying to go through my Chelsea ones here, I think Victor Moses scored against us. That
was right at the bottom of the list. That is correct.
Yeah.
I think that was in. I think that was in the Community Shield, that very first one.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that game. Like stretching the date there completely there, Charlie.
I think we've said this one. I'm going to say it anyway. Aubameyang.
We've not said Aubameyang. He's on the list.
Okay.
I'm just going to pause you there, and because we're streaming live on Twitch, I'm going to thank Alan Hansen, which is an absolutely great name for if you're doing sport, for the raid on Twitch, and I appreciate that. We're just in the middle of our podcast recording at the minute, but I appreciate that. Currently talking about goal scorers in Arsenal and Chelsea fixtures since the 2015-16 season to now. So Charlie and Pete are deep in thought here, but welcome in everyone. And back to you, Charlie.
Are we allowed to take a point or choose now to check how many we've got so far? How many are left? Do you know?
Yeah,
God, you have to make a count them now. 1, 2.
Okay, don't worry. We can.
Well, you think of another one, and I'll count in the meantime. Okay.
There's still a few left, I imagine. Then.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's still quite a lot.
I've got a couple written down.
There's
Alex Iwobi.
That is correct. There was 14 left, so that makes it 13 left.
Gabriel Martinelli.
That is correct.
Ran the length of the pitch, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
Most overrated goal ever.
It was further back than I thought that one, to be fair.
Jorginho.
That's correct. Trading that penalty.
Classic.
Hector Bellerin.
That is correct. He actually scored 2 late equalisers. I had to make sure I wasn't double
counting.
I remember one of them. I can't remember.
Yeah, they were both 2-2, and Bellerin scored 2 late equalisers. I was so confused.
Ridiculous.
I was like, am I looking at this same picture twice?
I don't know if we've said this before. Willian.
You haven't?
We've not said William, and he's not on the list at all.
Yeah.
So that is incorrect.
Pretty mad to think that he
Willian
never
must
scored against Arsenal. No, because I was thinking of him as well, and then I was thinking, wait, he's never actually scored against them. So yeah.
He's going to be a army now, and then find some like.
Oh, yeah. Based on last week, yeah.
Of course.
Strolling through all the fixtures. So technically, Pete would win here, but I'm gonna make Pete.
No, let's go to the end. I want to make it. I want to make him hurt. I want to make him hurt. Yeah.
While he VARs to see if it's correct, but I've scrolled through every fixture and I'm quite confident. So.
Yeah, I'm confident that he hasn't scored as well. So.
Yeah, that's all right then. So you've still got I think 13 left. So keep going as many as you can, and we'll work them out.
Go with Pedro.
Pedro is correct.
Koscielny.
That is also correct.
Tammy Abraham.
Correct.
I mean, I'm slightly stealing this from Alan Hansen. I noticed has put this in the chat, but I was going to say this one. Batshuayi.
I did see that in the chat. I didn't want to throw you off. Also, because it's not actually in the list, so it's also incorrect.
I'm sure I remember him scoring though.
No, I don't remember him playing that much.
This is
VAR.
Can't VAR.
He's just having flashbacks of seeing him score against Arsenal. Any more?
I'm pretty sure he scored 2 in one game against us.
No, definitely not. That's right.
I'm sure he was on loan somewhere. Where's he been on loan?
Yeah, might be that. Yeah, possibly.
Back to you, Pete, if you've got any more.
Yeah, I'm going to throw in one of the own goals that I know, which is Callum Chambers.
That is the second own goal. Charlie actually got the other own goal, which was Rudiger earlier on.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, I remember Rudiger scoring against us, not an own goal though.
You got any more, Charlie?
Oxlade-Chamberlain, I'm pretty sure.
Yep, right at the bottom, very old one there.
Community Shield, isn't it?
Yeah, it was definitely in a cup tie, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm calling it a cup tie.
Let's go with...
We're running low. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right. Can I just say...
Oh, here we go.
Arsenal-Chelsea. Chelsea won 3-0. Batshuayi double. Helps Blues to victory. 2017.
Is this friendly?
Let me have a look. Oh, that was a friendly. Does that not count?
No, it's a friendly.
There's no friendly. You need to listen to the rules next time before you start playing.
The more important part is the William one. I need to find if the...
Yeah, that never happened either. So
we'll wait for pending William.
My go, isn't it?
Yeah, either of you now. You've won anyway, Pete, I'm saying. But either way, Batshuayi one was wrong, I'm saying. So got a back up.
Let's go with Christian Pulisic.
That is also correct. 4 more left.
I'm out, I think.
You're out?
Yeah,
I expected more from an Arsenal fan like you.
Well, we've got 2 Arsenal and 2 Chelsea left.
Okay, I know it's scored. I think there's a Community Shield one, but I'm going to Kolasinac.
Kolasinac is correct. That was a
Community Shield,
yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking. Oh, wait. Is it just me doing this now? As Marshall?
I think he's given up now. He's out.
He's given up.
You've got one player.
Alvaro Morata is one.
That is correct.
I remember the whole new game. I remember, yeah. And then in that same game there was Mkhitaryan that we haven't said yet.
That is also correct. Because he's going. There's one player left here.
Is it just one? I thought it was two.
There was 3 left before then, so you got Morata,
Oh, okay.
Mkhitaryan, and you've got one player left.
And is it
Pete
Chelsea?
Storman. It's a Chelsea player that's left.
I want this really bad just to rub it into more.
Just to complete the set.
Yeah.
He's been pretty formidable here, Charlie. I think you would have struggled either way.
Oh.
Yeah, if you remember, like his picture, like you had with that Mkhitaryan.
Yeah, I've been basing it off of fixtures.
Yeah.
Why, is there someone else in that fixture, you're saying?
No, I don't think he's in that fixture. Like,
Okay.
Well, I've not got a list of every fixture with the ones it could be, but based on my listing, he's quite far down from Morata, so I don't think he is.
Oh, that's annoying.
I don't know if we've said him. Kurt Zuma.
Oh, it is.
That's the one, yeah.
It's the 2-0, yes.
He's the missing one, yeah.
Yeah, wasn't that was the same game of the Chambers own goal?
That's the Callum Chambers own goal.
Yeah, they're next to each other, yeah, that's correct.
I actually couldn't remember the other goal scorer.
Yeah, you did very impressive there, Pete, I'm not going to lie. I think you would have won either way, even though I got barred on the...
Yeah, I'd won when we started this quiz.
Yeah. I had a little bit of a bonus tiebreak question in case we had a draw or anything, just that I'm going to give to either side of you. So, Charlie, because you lost, you can have it first. I'll do it that way. In that period that we've been discussing, how many trophies have Arsenal won, including all those competitions that we talked about?
Including all of those competitions. So we're including some of these.
We're including Community Shield, FA Cup, League, European competition.
Well, we haven't won any European competition, I can say that much.
That's the Europa League final, but yeah.
We can add in... How many FA Cups did we win in that period? It's going to be a guess, but I'm going to go for... we won one of those Community Shields on penalties for sure. What was the period again? Start of 2015 season?
2015 to current.
2015 to current, yeah. So the Community Shield at the start of 2015 is included.
I'm going to go... 5 or 6? 5? 6?
Look, it's not a
Take one.
question.
I'll go 5. I'll go under.
It is 5. So 2 FA Cups.
All of them are against Chelsea, aren't they?
Well,
Most of them. Some of the FA Cups weren't.
2
Community
FA
Shields and
two
FA
others.
Cups.
Yeah, it's 2 FA Cups and 3 Community Shields. I think you'd won the FA Cup the year before the cut-off period as well, so yeah, you could have got slightly confused by that one. And then the same question for you, Pete. Yours is slightly more difficult because I've included any European major trophy in this, and people could depend if you call these major trophies or not.
The one you're thinking of, no, I don't call that a major European trophy.
Well, we think of Chelsea, the Super Cup.
Well, yeah,
or that stupid...
Or the Club World Cup.
Because it's not a tie break, I'm not too fussed. Just give me a guess of how many.
It's going to be very controversial.
I've written every trophy I would count as a major trophy.
Into 2015.
It was a lot more varied list than Charlie's.
Yeah, it's a much more difficult question to actually a good football club, so it's annoying.
He's like, because it's his guest appearance on the pod, he's like, I need to get all the quiz right, and I need to get this one right as well. It's like,
I think we
spotting up.
I want to say we won a double the year before this, before 2015. So 2014 was a good year. I'm going to go with 7.
6. So I had the 6 as 1 Premier League, 1 FA Cup, 1 Champions League, 1 Europa League, 1 Club World Cup, 1 UEFA Super Cup. Is the 6 that I had.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, there's some. I think Charlie might debate some of the Club World Cups and the UEFA Super Cup, but
I was including those in mine. But yeah.
So yeah, either way, it wasn't a tiebreak question, so you'd already won. So I'd written it, so I was like, I'll ask it anyway. Why not?
So just out of interest, if we take the two out that aren't actually cups, we can say that Arsenal have more trophies in that period.
But I wouldn't also call Community Shield a trophy, so
that's true.
Yeah, let's take away the Community Shield.
Yeah, I would value the UEFA Super Cup more than the Community Shield.
Yeah,
because they are literally the same.
Not forget there's a Champions League in there as well.
Yeah, the fact there's a Champions League and a Prem, I think I'll take one of them over the other ones, to be fair. Yeah, you could even argue Europa over an FA Cup, to be fair, at this point. But yeah, that was good anyway. Thank you both for that one. I'm sure Pete enjoyed it more than Charlie. Did you VAR that, William? Guess, or did you just give up, Charlie?
I can't be bothered.
He's not that. He's not. I can tell you now. He's not scored.
Either way, Batshuayi was incorrect, so it got you out there. I'm afraid. I think Alan Hansom in the chat might have
nice work, Alan.
That one. I appreciate it.
I did anyway. I do remember him scoring against us. That's why I said it. But I just noticed that he also said.
Yeah, Alan said it was because I think there's rumours about potentially going on loan, so it just kind of came into his mind with Batshuayi. Still, I don't even know what age he is now, but he's still batting around. He's still going to be like, what is he, like 24, 25? He's not going to be like that old, really, is he?
Batshuayi.
Yeah, Batshuayi.
Yeah, I think he's like 27 now.
Got getting on. But yeah, we will move on to the second half of the pod where we'll look at the fixtures. Moving ahead to game week 3. Hello to Booth in the chat as well while we're talking about everyone in the chat. I hope you're doing well. Let's move on to game week 3 then. And we will start from the top. And I feel like we should start with Charlie's favourite team, or least favourite team, should I say, with Spurs. I feel like at the minute, Charlie, this is more like a general question around the fixtures, that a lot of teams are lacking Spurs assets. I don't think you've got any Spurs assets in your team at all, from memory.
Kulusevski.
Oh, you do have Kulusevski. So I'm pretty sure you're quite happy to have him in your team going forward, because Spurs' run isn't too bad and it gives you a good Spurs coverage. What would you say about Spurs going forward? Is it a team we should be looking to target a bit more now past that Chelsea fixture?
Yeah, I think the main reason that they're not in many teams is because what would probably be the best assets is whoever's going to lock down a wing-back role, and it doesn't look like anyone will. It would just be rotation throughout the season because there's multiple players that can fit in those positions. So really, you either have to go for someone that's definitely going to play like a Dyer, for example, who just doesn't really have... I think he scored in the first game week, but he generally doesn't have much attacking threat, and he's just going to be to try and get 6 points and pick up the clean sheets. Or you have to go... I don't think anyone's going up to Kane or Son anymore because of the equivalent premiums at their value. People prefer Salah to Son and people prefer Haaland to Kane at the moment. So that only really leaves you with Kulusevski, which is where I am at. But like I said earlier in the pod, he may well make way for Diaz at some point, possibly next week when Liverpool go to Bournemouth. Even though Tottenham will be away to Forest, but I feel over the course of the season, Diaz is going to be better value than Kulusevski is. But I think there's too many questions about a lot of their assets that doesn't, and there's so many other options that you don't have to feel forced into going with them. So yeah, for now I'm fine with just the one, particularly an attacking asset. And I guess for this specific game week, at home against Wolves, who are looking very sort of toothless at the moment, it's not a bad time to have a Spurs defender in there. But yeah, I think just long term, I would be happy with one or even no assets going forward, even though the next couple of fixtures are quite good.
Yeah, those wing backs are enticing, but it's getting the right one at the right time, isn't it? It'd be interesting to see if Perisic gets a start. He needs to get building up that fitness really for the Champions League. So I think a lot of them are wait and see. And if you get into a situation where Son's going to be so explosive again, then you have to think about jumping on some other assets at some point. But yeah, Wolves isn't. Well, I think Wolves are a bit more open at the back with the 4-back that they've moved to instead of the 5-back formation they've used previously. So it might be a bit more open than we think that game. So I can see Kulusevski doing well potentially. So it's a bit of a dilemma, that one. So just as we're moving on to next fixtures, remind us of what you said about your transfer plans, Charlie, going forward, that you're thinking of about Diaz. Was it around?
Well, so yeah, that won't be till the following week. So
Yeah.
this week, I've got 2 free transfers. Robertson, I'm considering moving to James. That's, again, just kind of more longer-term shift with the view to then moving in Diaz and moving to attacking assets from Liverpool rather than defensive.
Yeah.
And then the only other real area in my team that's a bit of a worry is Bailey. Obviously didn't start that game this weekend, and I don't think... Again, yeah, I mean, he's a 5 million option, so you have to kind of manage your expectation for a player at that value. But equally, I think I probably need to adjust my squad to not have someone in that price bracket. So I think either I'm going to you would either end up downgrading to like a 4.5 bench fodder and kind of shift formation, so you don't have to play that player, or you try and find the funds to move up to like bring in another one of these 8 millions or someone else if they come into the force. So. Yeah, those are the kind of main areas that I'm targeting. I'm pretty happy with the rest of my squad, to be honest. I mean, it is fairly template and what a lot of people have. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with everywhere else. And for the time being, people like Trippier, I'm happy with the rotation with Pereira, which is what I talked about, I think, ahead of the first week or ahead of last week. In terms of fixtures, it works quite well. So yeah, pretty happy with my squad other than those 2 areas which I'll look to target.
Yeah, I'm hoping for similar with that Pereira and Trippier rotation. I think Pereira got a bit of a knock, but I don't think it's too serious. I'm hoping at least to ruin the rotation when he's injured, but it shouldn't be too bad, I don't think. Back to you, Pete. Just remind us of your plans or dilemmas you've got going into this week.
Yes, I think the main plan that I've said already is downgrading Saka in terms of price to Martinelli, but upgrading in terms of football player in my opinion anyway. That would be my only try. I'm only making 1. I'll carry 2 over, and then the week after will be when I consider the Leicester goalkeeper and things like that. And I'd also say that I've also got the Leon Bailey dilemma. I'll be interested to see what his minutes are saying against Crystal Palace. Yeah, because downgrading the Saka, I might be tempted by someone like an Aronson in the next price bracket. I think he might be quite a good player after all.
Yeah, I think Bailey is one of those dilemmas, isn't it? Because I think even after, if you're watching with Crystal Palace, I don't like the fixtures, particularly for the next 4 or 5 weeks after it. Yeah. So I think it's probably a good time to get rid, but I can understand it's a strange price point, isn't it? If you haven't got any more cash in the bank, like straight away, it's difficult to move up.
Yeah, it's difficult.
But like you said, you'll be getting some money from you're doing your downgrade to Martinelli, so that'll give you at least a 0.5 million or whatever, depending on what you do with your goalkeeper situation. But yeah, it's a sticky situation if you haven't got any money to upgrade. I've seen a few people potentially just going down to another 4.5 and just, especially if they've got 2 transfers and not sure what to do with it, just kind of, it's not burning the transfer, but getting some more money out. And I was looking at your team, it's slightly similar to Charlie's. You've got Kulusevski in there as well. It's not far off, really. To be fair, I think the main one is the goalkeepers and then James and Robertson, which is the one that Charlie's looking to do, which is you say you're ahead of the curve with Charlie for once. Whenever you're ahead of the curve with Charlie, you have to take some credit.
Well, he's got 2 returns in 2 weeks so far, so he's looking good.
Yeah, it's like, thank God. I remember, because I wasn't watching the game live, and I looked at flash score when it was 1-0. I'm like, okay, James, get your clean sheet, take that. And then I saw it 2-1. I'm like, oh, for God's sake. Before I looked at the goal scorers, and I'm like, yeah, saved there at the same time.
It wasn't far off the own goal for the final goal. I'm still not sure it was Kane's goal, to be honest. I didn't see a proper angle on it.
It was a bit sus, wasn't it? But I'm sure as James owners, we're not going to complain. It was slightly debatable.
Yeah.
So in terms of my team, obviously, I'm not sure. We'll probably catch up on Sam's team when he's back on next week. What kind of moves he's made. So as I mentioned, I've got a 4.5 million burning right in my pocket here, and I feel like I need to make a move this week, just because I want a better player in my starting lineup. That is the idea. Because at the minute, my bench would be Archer, Bailey, Trippier, and then I'd have to play Neto and Pereira. So I'm like, I've got 4.5 million in my bank. I may as well just use it. I don't see much benefit in me having that much money sat there and not using it, even though I've only got one transfer. So I'm a bit undecided where to use those funds. I could really use it in any position. So you guys might be advising me on certain options here, to be fair, along with everyone else in the podcast. So I've got in my mind the goalkeeper needs to change at some point because I've got that double Leicester issue, but I'm happy to leave that until next week. Midfield, I could pump it into midfield, upgrade Bailey or Neto to a lot of options, like anyone in that 8 million kind of bracket, except for Diaz because I've already got triple Liverpool. Or I could also get another premium defender. I could do Neco Williams to Cancelo, or I could do Archer to a better striker like a Mitrovic or Tony or someone like that. So there's a lot of options, and I'm not really set on any of them yet, so I'm a bit undecided. I want to use the funds I've got, but I'm not overly sold on where to do it. Any suggestions, either of you, how any of those like stick out to you as the best options?
Well, I was just doing the maths in my head. So you got 4.5 in the bank, right?
Yeah.
Which is enough to do one of your 4.0 keepers up to Edison and then a Bailey to an 8 million, which works out exactly, but obviously you just need to work out who that 8 million is.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to get Pete's because obviously Chelsea going on a nice little run of fixtures.
But hasn't Bailey dropped in price? So won't that stop me doing that?
Okay.
Yeah, he's 4.9 now.
All right, maybe that throws a spanner in the
I could
works.
always change the goalkeeper, couldn't I? Like,
yeah,
because I think like Sanchez and Raya are not bad options at 4.5. If I wanted to do that.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
but yeah, I am interested to get Pete's thoughts on Mason Mount because he has been my go-to, particularly last year was my go-to midfielder of choice from Chelsea because the others tend to rotate a lot. Mount seems to start whenever possible and contributes when he can, and particularly without the focal point of a striker, it seems he's in more advanced positions at the moment. But yeah, what do you think, Pete?
I'd say at the moment I'm not tempted by him at all, and I think that's purely because last season he was more involved in the set pieces, the corners, and the free kicks, and at the moment it doesn't seem like. Certainly not on both sides. I know for the Koulibaly, it was a Cucurella corner. And I think Reece James likes to take corners, Chilwell takes corners, and I can't see the value in Mount at the moment for that price range when you've got the likes of a Kulusevski. I know you can't get Diaz with a triple Liverpool, but Diaz definitely a better option. I'd even say Saka's a better option currently as well than Mount. But yeah, it depends. It all depends on Mount's role and his game time this season, which I think will be down a little compared to last season, to be honest.
So I've kind of got a short list of it's not really a short list. If I was going for a defender, like upgrading a defender, I'd get Cancelo. But I've got in my mind that at some point I might do Robertson to Cancelo, and then that frees up that Liverpool spot, which I then could get in Diaz. So I'm a bit shaky on that midfield spot because I don't want to commit to one now and then want to go to Diaz later. If I could upgrade Archer to a playing striker, and I'm looking at Tony's fixtures and like they're incredible fixtures over that 5 or 6 weeks, and Tony is not highly owned at all, and he's done quite well the first 2 games, so it's slightly differential in that approach. So the current shortlist is either Cancelo, Tony, or any choice of midfielders really. So it's not really a shortlist on midfielders because I have no clue I'd go for a midfield.
I like the Tony shot, to be fair. I did look because I think, like you said, Brentford's fixtures are really good. They've been performing pretty well. We can't be too influenced by that United match, but they have been doing quite well. And and like you say, because he's quite low owned, people generally aren't playing 3 strikers at the moment. It might be an opportunity to get ahead of people if he does start to go on a bit of a run. I think, I would, if my squad was set up right for it, I would probably get him in, but just because of the way my squad is at the moment, I can't get a third striker.
Yeah, because I think if there was a midfielder that stood out for me, I would go for it. I think if I didn't have Robbo, I'd go for Diaz, but I don't really want to waste 2 transfers on getting rid of Robbo and then bringing in Diaz. And the only other one that really appeals to me is Kulu. I'm not 100% sold on that one. and you can say I could do Tony, and then I'll still have a bit in the bank, and I could always put a Bailey up to like a 6 million player or something. So, because Tony I think is 7 million, isn't he? And so I'd use 2.5 out of the 4.5 million. So I'd still have 2 million left, which I could use the 2 million then to still get a goalkeeper, and then potentially take Bailey or someone up at the same time. So it's kind of spreading the funds across, but we've also always got that wild card up the sleeve. So having this funds has allowed me to be quite flexible in targeting different players depending on the fixtures, because I'm not really setting that structure. So I'm warming. I didn't really look at Tony until I was looking at goalkeepers, because I'm like, this Leicester issue is an issue. And I'm like, what goalkeeper can I bring in a few weeks? And I was looking at Raya, Sanchez, all those around that range, and I saw Brentford's fixture. And I'm like, these are quite good as an attacker as well. So I'm warming to that Tony idea. I'm slightly wary of Cancelo hurting me in the coming weeks, but I think I've got Newcastle and then Palace, which I'm hoping can limit the damage, and then maybe make him move Robbo to Cancelo further down the line. And if Diaz looks lively, I've always got that avenue, but we'll see. I'm edging towards Tony or a slight upgrade in midfield so far, but well, you'll find out on the next pod, but I'll take you guys between them as well at the same time. Lots of options possibly to go for there. But yeah, Charlie's talked up Tony, so he's second on the list so far. Yeah, I'm not used to these dilemmas in like game week 3. It's like having all these funds. We'll take them. And just thinking, I know I mentioned earlier about that Liverpool game. It may be getting postponed. Obviously, it's not guaranteed. If I was upgrading Archer to Tony, I think my whole 15, except for the double goalkeepers, would actually get some minutes. So if those 3 Liverpool players didn't play as well, I would have Bailey, Trippier, and then Neto or Pereira on the bench, who I think will all get minutes, but covers me in case that does get postponed. Obviously, that's not my number one consideration, but it was just an interesting thing to see on the other side of that coin. But yeah, some interesting moves to make, potentially. Instead of going through all the fixtures, I think we'll cut to what we think for captaincy, because I think that kind of gives you a good hint of where the best fixtures and assets lie. So, Pete, have you thought about captaincy for the next week? Is there someone you're leaning towards and other players you're considering?
Yeah, I'm between at the moment. I'll be between the 2 Arsenal players, to be honest. Bournemouth away. I think they're both likely to get some sort of return. I know Jesus is off a 4-goal return, but also Martinelli's back-to-back goals, back-to-back game weeks of a goal. And he looks good, and I think it'll be between those 2. I think Newcastle will do all right at home to City. I can't see Haaland having too much involvement similar to the Bournemouth game. So yeah, it's more towards Jesus or Martinelli for me currently.
What about Salah?
No. I said this in the Discord at the time against Palace. I'm staying clear of a Salah captain at the moment. Since the AFCON, he's just not been the same player as pre-AFCON. He's still been getting goal returns, and he probably will get some more goal returns. But in terms of a player I want, I'd rather have Jesus or Martinelli for this game week particularly.
Are you not at all influenced by the fact that it's against Man United?
I can say the defence can have an impact.
No, like, you guys are probably going to call me crazy, but I can see Man U. I can't, like, people saying Liverpool are going to thump Man U. I can't see that happening. I think there will be a response from Man U following the Brentford game. I think if they can get his fans somewhat on the side at the start, keep the atmosphere good.
There won't be any fans in.
There is that point. But yeah, I can see. I can't see it being a thumping. It might be like a 1 or 2 goal win, but it won't be the 5-0 that it was last year.
I think it all depends on how Ten Hag sets up, because
yeah.
I think Charlie mentioned it earlier. Their issue at centre back at the minute, Liverpool. If they've got Nat Phillips playing, you just stick like Rashford or Sancho or something on him the whole game, and you could play a 5-back and just put it over the top.
Yeah, it's literally just copy what Palace did.
Yeah.
I think.
But
it might get a bit. I don't think the fans would be consider it's a home game for Man U. I don't think the fans will be quite on board with that, but I think it would work.
In fairness, the fans will be toxic whatever happens with the current situation.
Yeah, exactly.
So
you can't really win in that. You can't win in that bit at the moment.
You can't win. But the thing is, like, we could make a goal, but I don't see our defence keeping them out of the back. So, like, it could still be. I expect Liverpool to win comfortably. It could still be a 3-1 just to typically ruin the double Liverpool clean sheet. But yeah, not great hope. What about you, Charlie, in terms of captaincy? What are you thinking?
Similar places really. Between one of the Arsenal boys or Salah. I think for the moment, just as a kind of initial thoughts, I'd put it on Salah. But yeah, obviously it would be nice for me to go into that Arsenal game with a captaincy on one of the boys. Yeah, I'm quite undecided at the moment, to be honest. I think, I'm not sure I share the same reservations that you both seem to have about Liverpool against that United team. I think regardless of what United do, Liverpool are coming away comfortably winners. And I expect Salah to do very well. But equally, I expect both Jesus and Martinelli to do well. So it'll be a bit of a toss of a coin. I also agree with Pete. I think that Newcastle have defended pretty well so far. And I have a feeling that even if they try and if they try and contain City, it's not going to work because City will break them down and get through. But it's not going to be ideal for Haaland. That's what I think we saw in the game just gone. It was the likes of De Bruyne and Gundogan and these players from deep that scored well FPL wise. Whereas Haaland seems to struggle against that kind of lower block. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm not quite sure I fancy Haaland for this week. But it will probably be Salah if I had to go for one now.
Don't get me misunderstood. I've got no reservations about Salah. Salah's currently my captain. Like, I'm not trying to disguise that fact. Like, for me, it could change to Jesus. It'll be Salah or Jesus for me. Between those two, I just wanted to get your opinion, Charlie. I feel like if this Arsenal game was at home, there'd be no doubt about captaining an Arsenal player, in my opinion. But the fact that it's away, does that change your views? Obviously, it's against Bournemouth. So I still expect you to do very well. But I don't know how it is from an Arsenal fan point of view. Do you think you're stronger at home at the minute, or no difference home and away?
Definitely stronger at home. I think it's been a very underrated stadium for a while. The atmosphere in the stadium has been quite underrated because there's this historic thing about the Arsenal stadium and there not being very much noise and stuff. It's actually been one of the better atmospheres in the league for at least a couple of years, and particularly now the fans are so behind the team, and even when, like I mentioned earlier, when something goes wrong, the fans support it. They're not aggressive like they have been in the past. So it's a very positive atmosphere at the moment at home. So yeah, I think that probably would tip it in the Arsenal players' favour if it were at home. This is all hypothetical, of course, because it's away. So yeah, it's difficult to say. I think it probably puts them level in terms of potential return. I think because you just have to back the history of Salah has done it more consistently over a long period of time. That probably gives you the safer pick, but it is quite exciting going into a bit of the unknown of late, of this kind of exciting new options in Jesus and Martinelli.
I'm at the opposite side of the scale, captaining Salah against my own team. It's total opposite end there. So it'll be interesting. If you was predicting that game now, Charlie, what score do you think it would be? Just trying to help.
Game?
No, the Arsenal game.
Probably 3-0. I don't know if I'm maybe being too generous, and maybe I should probably, considering it's at home for Bournemouth, maybe they get one back because it does seem we have an error in us. But yeah, I would expect us to score quite well. And using that Man City game as a kind of a judge, then not as well as that, but still doing well. So yeah, probably 3-0 or 3-1.
Yeah, just trying to gauge in terms of potential returns we could get from Arsenal assets. Because I wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool scored a similar kind of amount of goals. So I think it's going to be a tough one. It could be another one of those where they're both good picks, but you're just on the bad side of the swing, as we've seen, maybe like a Haaland and a Kane earlier in the season already, so it's going to be a tough one to call, and it could have significant swings either way. Pete, you don't fancy Chelsea player away at Leeds? Don't fancy Reece James?
The only Chelsea player in my team is Reece James, and I don't think I've ever captained a defender, and I won't be doing it now. I think it'll be a good game, but yeah.
I love captaincy on a defender. I remember Luca Dean has become like a troll on FPL now. I remember, I think 2 or 3 seasons back, triple captaining Luca Dean in a double game week, and he outscored Kane. I was absolutely loving it. Got to bring back them memories. I don't mind the defender captaincy now and again.
I just think when you've got a team like Arsenal at Bournemouth, I can't see captaining a defender being their choice.
Yeah, I think I'd still fancy Chelsea to win that, but not. Well, I don't know. Leeds are a bit difficult to tell at the minute. I could see you getting a few goals at the same time, but it depends if you.
I think they play in the style that our attack will be able to thrive a bit more. I think. Unlike the Everton game where it was just getting through 90 minutes.
Yeah, I think Mount did well in both games against Leeds in last season as well. So I know Charlie mentioned him earlier. If you've still got Mount, I wouldn't be recommending getting rid of him for this fixture, even for a Diaz.
No, definitely not. Yeah.
I was going to mention Sterling to you there, but I feel like Sterling's at a strange price point that unless you're on a wild card or it gets later on the season, I feel like it's not really an option. You'd rather just go for Havertz or Mount currently. I don't know.
I mean, I would agree with that. I think he's 11.5, isn't he?
10, isn't he, I think?
10, I think.
Oh, it's 10. Yeah, sorry, I've massively done it. But even at 10, I can't see that being a better choice than the likes of a Salah or something like that. I would stay away until there's a nice run of fixtures. Is my point of view on that one.
Yeah, I think you just need to see him adjust a bit to that Chelsea team a bit more as well to see how it's flowing. I feel like you've not clicked properly in attack yet, so it's one to keep an eye on.
I liked his performance against Everton. I thought he was our best player, certainly in attacking sense against Everton. He looked the most likely, and I mean, he didn't play particularly well against Tottenham, but got an assist, created that chance for Havertz that was well saved. So he's definitely an option moving forward, I would say.
Yeah, one to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
So I think with that captaincy question, we've kind of covered the main teams to obviously. With the price in FPL this year, I feel like you're always getting a lot of the players in from these big teams anyway. So, kind of discussing about those key captaincy questions kind of deals with a lot of the fixtures going forward into next game week. Is there anything from your guys' point of view of any of the fixtures that kind of anything that sticks out to you, like potential options people could be looking for, even if they want like a value midfielder or, like I've said with an Ivan Toney, there's no kind of fixtures that catch your eye there or advice would give outside of what we've talked about so far?
Not really for me. I think it's more of the same because of, like we've talked about before, because of the pricing and everything.
Yeah.
It feels like you only really need to focus on the top 5 or 6 in the table, and again with the way the fixtures are, that just plays right into that as well. So I don't think you really need to venture outside of that at all.
Yeah, and how early we are in the season, trying to get a gauge of how others, like I think the top 5 or 6 are reliable, and they're going to do particularly well, especially with the fixtures like you mentioned. Some of the other teams might have had a lot of signings or a lot of changes, and you need to gauge what they're like and maybe jump onto them when they get to a better run. A key example could be like a Crystal Palace. We've seen they can be pretty decent, but they've got bad fixtures. But as we get further along, it might warm to a Zaha or something like that, or even I was going to say
Elise for me is the one that I'm looking at later down the line.
Yeah, it'd be an interesting one. There's going to be some
even Eze as well.
Yeah, I think was it Eze? This was like he looked great in attack, but he just was doing nothing going back. Like in that Liverpool game, it was just badly exposed going backwards. Was there anything else for you, Pete, that kind of stuck out for you in these game week fixtures? Anything else?
I know you've already talked a lot about Brentford. I'll just be looking at Brentford in terms of the David Raya option mainly as my goalkeeper, and also the West Ham Brighton game. I'll be looking at Sanchez, and I know that they've just signed a new left back, SG Pinan, from Villarreal. He's 4.5 million. I quite like the look of him as an option later down the line, I think. So I think at the moment their left wing back's been Trossard.
Yeah.
And he's been playing well there, but I think Brighton good defensively. They brought in Colwill. They've already got a good defence. So yeah, I'll be looking at Sanchez and then potentially Estupinan.
Yeah, that kind of actually makes Trossard actually an option if he plays actually more attacking rather than having a midfielder playing at wing back. Although I will say when they played against United, like in the first 10 seconds, he was literally pressing the centre back from left wing back, which is a bit crazy. But it might release him. And actually, I feel like Trossard is that one everyone considers when you get like double game weeks, but you don't generally think of him when you just run of the mill kind of picks. But might free him up later in the season. Yeah, that's a good point on Brighton. Brighton have looked pretty impressive so far. I know people have been talking about Pascal Gross. So he scored 2 against United and he got quite a few big chances and in good positions in the second game as well. I think Brighton really should have beat Newcastle in that second game. I think there was at least 2 cleared off the line. I think on that one, Charlie was quite lucky with a Trippier clean sheet. But we'll take all we can get at this stage. I think even Trippier himself played one of them off the line. But yeah, that's a good point to add there, Pete. A few interesting teams to look at going forward. Yeah, like I mentioned, Brentford. Yeah, Tony may end up in the team. It's one to consider for sure. We shall see. But yeah, if you've got nothing to add, guys, I think we're done for this week. If we're good.
Yep.
Yeah. So thank you, Pete, for being guest starring and winning the quiz.
No problem.
Showing Charlie how it's done. I'm sure if we need a able substitute later on in the season, I'm sure we might come calling again. And then you can give Charlie another beat down. We should add that, Matt. We should add that quiz, Matt, to the Sam score, really, shouldn't we? Because I think you were winning 2-0.
Oh no! Don't give Sam anymore. Don't do that. No.
I was trying to get him back into it, but yeah.
No.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Pete, and of course, Charlie. Thank you as usual, and thank you everyone for listening. And we should be back similar time next week, but we shall keep you updated. Have a great rest of your evening, everybody.